Hello, this is Stillcop Pharmaceuticals' drug development team bringing you a new medication, doxyretin, brand name Uretin.
Hello, my name is Varun Singh, and I'm one of the co-directors for clinical development. So for the drug doxyretin, the drug class is a partial mu receptor agonist. So the mechanism of action is that doxyretin stimulates the opioid receptors in the VTA that inhibit GABA neurons, which causes disinhibition of the dopaminergic neurons that causes euphoria by the release of dopamine in the nucleus accumbens. Looking at similar drug classes, we assume that the contraindications will be hypersensitivity and pregnancy. And by that same note, by looking at similar drug classes, we can assume the adverse effects for this drug will be acute opioid withdrawal. So we'll expect to see side effects like pain, tachycardia, hypertension, fever, nausea, vomiting, and so on. We're going to be cautious with patients with cardiovascular disease and with patients with a history of seizures. On top of that, with patients with we're going to avoid patients with opioid overdose because that can cause respiratory depression. After our preclinical studies in animals are done and we have our IND approval, we will begin our clinical trials. For our phase 1 of clinical trials, we will be analyzing the safety of doxyretin in healthy human subjects. The study design we will be using will be an interventional, randomized controlled, double-blind, single-center trial. Our objective is to report severe side effects, toxicities, pharmacodynamics, and pharmacokinetics and determine the maximal tolerated dose of doxyretin. In our study, we will have 100 healthy adult volunteers as our test subjects. And as our primary safety outcomes, we will be looking out for the development of acute pancreatitis, impaired renal and hepatic function, signs of withdrawal, and opioid toxicity. And we expect the study duration for phase 1 to be 6 months. I will now hand it off to the other co-director.
Hi, my name is Nitin Nuthikatu. I am the second co-director of clinical development in this project. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is the phase 2 central neuropathic pain trials. So the purpose of these trials was to see whether doxyretin was good in the indication of central neuropathic pain. So what we did was we analyzed the efficacy and safety of doxyretin in certain subjects with central neuropathic pain. The study design was parallel, double-blind, multi-center, interventional, randomized control trial. So the study objective was to evaluate data for efficacy and safety of doxyretin in the cases of spinal cord injury, post-stroke neuropathic pain, or the pain of multiple sclerosis and determine the optimal dose. So, we had around 100 to 200 adult volunteers with central neuropathic pain, and the primary efficacy outcomes were the reduction of score on the pain scale, and the primary safety outcomes were the development of acute pancreatitis, renal and hepatic function, signs of withdrawal, and opioid toxicity to ensure that the drug was safe in terms of these specific outcomes. The study duration is around 1 year. So the other phase 2 trials that we did were for peripheral neuropathic pain. So here we analyze the efficacy and safety of doxyretin in subjects with peripheral neuropathic pain. The study design is very similar because it is a parallel, double-blind, multi-center, interventional, randomized control trial. The objective of the study was to evaluate data for efficacy and safety of doxyretin in conditions such as diabetic peripheral neuropathy, post-herpetic neuralgia, and HIV-associated neuropathic pain, as well as post-traumatic, post-operative peripheral neuropathy, and chemotherapy-associated peripheral neuropathy. So in these studies as well, there were around 100 to 200 adult volunteers with peripheral neuropathic pain. The primary efficacy outcomes were again reduction of score on a pain scale, and the primary safety outcomes were the development of acute pancreatitis, renal and hepatic function versus baseline, and signs of withdrawal as well as opioid toxicity. The study duration was 1 year. So Now I'll move on to phase 3 clinical trials. So this would assess the safety and efficacy of doxycycline versus an active placebo, oxycodone, on pain reduction in subjects with pain indications. So the study design was parallel, double-blind, multi-center, interventional, randomized controlled trial. So the objective was to determine doxycycline's therapeutic effect and safety compared to oxycodone in the condition of general neuropathic pain, which encompasses both central and peripheral neuropathic pain conditions. So there were 2,000 adult volunteers with general neuropathic pain that we tried to recruit. Interventions would include doxycycline, 5 milligrams by mouth 1 time a day, in one branch versus oxycodone 10 milligrams by mouth twice a day in the other branch. The primary outcome would again be a reduction of score on a pain scale, and the study duration would be 3 years. We also plan to do post-marketing surveillance for this drug by evaluating the long-term safety, tolerability, and effectiveness of doxycycline in subjects with neuropathic pain. The study design will be multi-center, observational, and open label. The objective would be to monitor doxycycline's long-term effectiveness, safety, and tolerability, and report adverse effects. So the primary ways that we would get the safety outcomes would be through adverse event reporting via the FDA Adverse Event Reporting System, FAERS, as well as MedWatch. The study duration will be ongoing for the duration of the drug on the market. I would like to end the clinical development section of this presentation by talking a little bit about the value of industry pharmacists in this process. So industry pharmacists can design and review clinical study protocol and ensure that there is internal and external validity in the trials. This is important to make sure that the data in a trial was gathered properly and valid, and so that every time the data is extrapolated to a general population, it can be used effectively. Industry pharmacists can also minimize information bias and selection bias by making sure that the population of subjects selected does not have any bias associated with it, and measuring results is done in a manner that can be properly analyzed. Industry pharmacists can also set up ways to monitor and report adverse events during clinical trials. And finally, they can make sure that there are safety measures on site, such as naloxone, which is very important because as a partial mu agonist, there is a very real chance that the drug that we are trying to get to market could also cause an opiate overdose, which we do not want, and even if it does happen, the patients will be safe with naloxone on site. Now I'm going to transition to the regulatory affairs team.
Hello, this is Selwyn Varghese, and I am the Director of the Regulatory Affairs. So once the data from the preclinical studies have been received and there's no safety concerns indicated from them, we could start our strategy for the FDA approval status. We will file an investigator IND because we understand that it is the best application for our potential drug. We wanted physicians to take a leading role when it comes to handling the proper vetting of our new drug. This would give our drug a potential new source of effective marketing with expertise overlooked from a physician. We decided not to use an emergency use IND or treatment IND since this is only considered for the treatment of analgesia and neuropathy, and that doesn't constitute an emergency use IND. We want to show through animal pharmacology and toxicology studies to show that our drug has no safety concerns to be worrying about. It will also include manufacturing information to show that we can produce a consistent supply of the drug in order to reduce potential backlogs and back orders of the drug to potential pharmacies, hospitals, and clinics. Finally, our IND will hold the clinical protocols and investigator information that will hold, among other documents, information about physicians and credentials that they hold. There will be 3 different formal meetings that we and the FDA have scheduled. Pre-IND Part B. Status: to be completed before the submission of IND. Since this is a new molecular entity, we plan on meeting to discuss the mechanism of action for our drug and the relevant animal studies that have already been performed. This meeting will help formulate trial designs and potential hold issues that have not yet been anticipated. End of Phase 2 and pre-NDA. Status: to be completed 60 days before the Phase 3 trials. This meeting is to evaluate potential Phase 3 trial plans and protocols to make sure issues are dealt with right away. Pre-NDA meetings will help us determine our planned marketing application and uncovering major issues that we have not yet also anticipated. Since this drug is not designed to treat a serious condition that would be seriously considered debilitating, or it's not an unmet medical need, we're not going to go through the expedited process to get this medication on the market faster. Since the expedited process will need us to buy a voucher instead, we will save that funds on the process and use them elsewhere. Our strategy will be to show how this drug, through its mechanisms of action and through subsequent trials based on our new molecular entity, will be an effective tool in the fight of chronic pain while reducing its side effects and dependency issues seen in other pain-relieving medications. Treating this medication like other medications in its drug class will make this process efficient, since there is a roadmap with drugs with similar mechanisms of actions, such as tramadol or bupropion, which are considered mainline therapies for chronic pain and neuropathy. It takes 180 days for approval or a complete response letter from the FDA. Trials cited will be the JNC 013, tramadol versus placebo, versus subsequent trials that we will perform. Pharmacists have an in-depth understanding of the current medication therapies of chronic pain other than healthcare practitioners. Showing these medications and the knowledge that we have compared to the potential side effects of the new medications will be instrumental in the formal meetings with the FDA to run smoothly. Also, the ability of pharmacists to sift through different trials and determine which are considered significant and which ones considered flaws make them an invaluable part of the regulatory team. I will now hand it off to the medical affairs team.
Hello, my name is Eric Zhang.
And my name is Joseph Varghese. We are co-directors for the medical affairs team.
Our team represents the intersection of development and commercialization. The development group's goal is to secure FDA approval for doxyretin, while the commercial team works on marketing and sales for the drug. Medical affairs acts as the bridge between the two due to its scientific and clinical expertise. This timeline shows the different phases of drug development for doxyretin. Medical affairs comes into play around 1 to 2 years before NDA approval or launch. This falls mostly within Phase 3. There are 5 teams within medical affairs. Medical science liaisons train both sales representatives and the commercial team about the disease states relevant to doxyretin. They communicate with external stakeholders and key opinion leaders. The medical information group is a team of experts who can address any concerns for commercialization of doxyretin, which include safety, efficacy, dosing, and administration. This team is active in developing commercial materials. They must always be prepared for product launches. The medical publications team directs and plans drug-related publications like abstracts, posters, and manuscripts. These are needed for commercialization. They also plan when to submit abstracts and release manuscripts. Lastly, they develop language for the organization regarding doxyretin.
The drug safety team is important in Phase 4, where pharmacovigilance involves looking for previously unseen adverse effects of the medication. The Health Economics and Outcomes Research Team, or HEOR, is formed before the launch. They work with clinical experts to find gaps in therapy that doxyretin can fill. They also perform an initial cost analysis of the drug, which marketing can use. Healthcare providers who make non-public, unsolicited requests can receive off-label information. Our medical science liaisons will form relationships with key opinion leaders, or KOLs, 1 to 2 years prior to launch. KOLs are clinicians that serve as an important source of knowledge for us. They may also allow the company to use their practice site as the study site location. Pharmacists can play a role in each of the three medical affairs teams. In the case of medical communications, pharmacists can assist in writing abstracts and manuscripts. As medication experts, they can be particularly helpful in developing language to describe clinical results. Pharmacists can effectively engage in research. As medical science liaisons or medical information experts, pharmacists can communicate with key opinion leaders or other external stakeholders. They have special knowledge of the therapeutics regarding pain medications, which will help them educate others in the company. Now that you know all about the medical affairs team, we will transition over to the marketing team.
The marketing team at Stilcott Pharmaceuticals is focused on showing the value of doxyretin and marketing it as a premier therapy for chronic pain. In order to understand our market, we plan to conduct surveys, focus groups, and informational interviews. We look to recruit patients with chronic pain to understand patient perceptions. We also look to work with industry and academic experts in order to better classify the nature of the chronic pain market and possible avenues for innovation. Lastly, we will look towards medical experts in the clinical field to better comprehend the needs and wants of our patients in our product. We will target our product to several different players in the healthcare industry. Payers will be a focal point to enable coverage for our drug and preferred formulary status. A possibility of value-based pricing can help achieve this. We will market directly towards patients to increase exposure through several different channels. We look to focus on healthcare providers to educate them on our drug and the benefits involved in its administration. Lastly, we will also push towards hospitals and more specifically hospital pharmacies to help them understand the value of our product based on our clinical trials. The channels we will target will be TV commercials, journals such as the American Association of Pharmaceutical Scientists, paid advertisements, and conferences related to chronic pain such as the Academy of Pain Medicine Conference. Pharmacists of the URETIN team will contribute to several aspects of the marketing process. They will develop market research methods and assist the sales team in compiling accurate yet scientifically correct information about our product. Pharmacists will use clinical knowledge to create presentations for conferences and magazines in order to better show the positive impact our product has on the chronic patient care experience.
Finally, I would like to talk about the opportunity due to the FDA notification that was given to one of our primary competitors. They just received a black box warning due to the increased risk of respiratory depression, coma, and death from a monotherapy. So in regards to a phase 3 trial, we want to show that there are different possible indications for this medication, and we want to make sure different outcomes are placed in the trials moving forward regarding 1, the safety of the monotherapy, and 2, the dosing in regards to respiratory depression, coma, and death. In regards to the marketing, by showing the additional research in regards to safety, we can avoid the black box designation. And with discussions with practitioners in different clinics, we could show how to possibly avoid these effects. And with that, we conclude our presentation about URETIN, our new medication from Stilcott Pharmaceuticals.